Are you listening?
Oh my god, are you playing Animal Crossing? What's your turnip prices? I totally need to get rid of mine. We forgot to exchange friend codes! Oh shit. Welcome to the Nerf Report. My name is Bryant. It is finally October, which means I have to do that all over again, so if you'll bear with me. Welcome, foolish mortals, to the Nerf Report. My name is Bryant Chappelle, and we have a lot to talk about. Treyarch and Raven Software dropped the first trailer for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War Zombie Mode. PlayStation gave us our first look at the remastered Marvel Spider-Man running on the PlayStation 5. Nintendo announced that Minecraft Steve will be coming to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and the long-awaited Stadia feature of crowd choice is now available. But despite all of that, for this week's episode, I want to talk to you about the indies. Because I say this all the time, but independent developers are the heart and soul of the video game industry. Without the indies, we wouldn't have had games like Hades, Undertale, Stardew Valley, Celeste, Guacamelee, or even Subnautica. In fact, if you were to look at the last year of the video game industry, some of the top games have all been produced by independent developers. We had Fall Guys from Mediatonic, Among Us from Inner Sloth, GTFO from 10 Chambers Collective, along with Risk of Rain 2 from Hapu Games, and many more. But I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is that independent developers are extremely important. And even though we are easily distracted by games like the Assassin's Creed or Cyberpunks of the world, indies are the ones who keep this industry going. And in today's world, we are so easily distracted by the announcement of Tencent acquired this studio, Microsoft has purchased that studio, or PlayStation is buying Studio X, that I think we forget to ask the very important question of, are these acquisitions good for gamers? Like, clearly, Xbox acquiring Bethesda or PlayStation acquiring Insomniac were good for both of the platform's player base. But are those acquisitions good for gamers? Do they benefit the industry? Or does it make it impossible for indie developers to now compete with these mega production companies that oftentimes include way more employees than the average indie developer has? And as we get more and more acquisitions, I feel like that is a very valid question to ask. Because both PlayStation and Xbox now have these mega production companies filled with extremely talented studios who are setting the standard for what video games should look like, feel like, or even play like. For example, PlayStation's worldwide studios is now home to 13 different developers, including Insomniac, Naughty Dog, Sony Santa Monica, Sucker Punch, and Sony Bend. Xbox Game Studios, on the other hand, has 21 studios, including Ninja Theory, Rare, Double Fine, id Software, and Bethesda Game Studios. And both of these mega production companies have thousands of employees, whereas your average indie developer might range from 1 to 15 people working on a video game. And while there are certainly cases of indie studios that have 100+ employees working on video games, those are definitely the outliers in this scenario. And quite frankly, the disadvantages against indie developers don't stop there. As Nathan Lovato with Game Analytics revealed that the average budget of a mobile to mid-size indie game ranges from $100,000 to $500,000, which pales in comparison to the budgets of the massive AAA studios, where their budgets can be upwards to $100 million. And while the massive studios oftentimes see success and profits on these investments, the rate of indie developers who actually make a profit off of their video game is under 1% of indie developers. And indie developers are not only understaffed and insufficiently funded, but they are also met with unrealistic expectations from gamers that expect things to be fixed overnight. Because with some of the larger studios with hundreds of developers working on a game, that's how it happens. I mean, think about how often we see gamers review bomb a game, or respond to a tweet stating, "Your game is dead." For massive studios, that is a big hurdle to overcome. Now imagine how difficult that might be if you were an indie studio of 2 to 3 people. So the sad reality of these acquisitions are that for many indie developers, the market is becoming harder and harder to survive in, which is why they sell to an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Tencent. Which is why you also have a recent trend of indie studios that are teaming up with larger production houses to assist in the production of massive AAA titles. In fact, with The Last of Us Part 2, developer Naughty Dog outsourced development of the game to 14 different studios. And the size of those studios ranged from 2 people all the way up to 50 employees. But again, the problem with that is that while that strategy certainly helps indie studios stay alive, it also takes away time from those very same indie studios from being able to create their own games. And look, I get it. There is a very valid argument to make that an indie studio being bought out by Xbox or PlayStation is a good thing, because it grants the studio stability, giving them the opportunity to continue making games that their fans love. But unfortunately, when an acquisition like this happens, that studio is no longer an indie. They may not change internally or stylistically, but in the punk rock sense of creation, they're now part of the system. So the question has to be asked, what can you and I do to help indie developers? Well, the best thing that we can do immediately is play more independently developed video games. Because in 2019, it was reported that on Steam, indie game sales were down 70% over 2018. And I'm sure part of that has to do with Epic Games making it more appealing to publish indie games on their platform. But the fact is, there are a ton of indie games to play. PlayStation, PC, Nintendo, Xbox, and Stadia have all done a great job in supporting the indies. But the other side of this is to follow these studios on social media and support all of their content. These studios are desperately trying to reach new audiences, and a simple like, retweet, share, or comment can cause the algorithm to lead hundreds of other people to see that game. And if you're on the side of this argument saying, I really don't like indie games, please understand that all of the major studios that you interact with are impacted by indie developers. Whether it's the game designer working on Call of Duty who got his start by making a game on his own, or the CEO of a company who, along with 3 other friends, started making video games in a spare bedroom. In many ways, indie developers are the heart and soul of the video game industry, and we can't let that die. Well, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Nerf Report. Thank you again so much for watching, and until next week, stay safe, everyone. Hey, thanks again for checking out our channel. Are you like the thousands of people in the comment section down below wondering why does this channel have so little subscribers? Well, You can fix that today by subscribing to the channel, liking the video, commenting, and sharing it with your friends, which I know sounds like a lot, but I feel like our channel is worth